Tape Deck Media.
Good morning, Ruddle Maniacs. Welcome back to another episode of Ruddle Me This. As always, I am the Ruddler, aka Taylor Ruddle, aka Rocky Road Balboa. I've got a fantastic interview for you this week. I am going to be joined by Dec McHale. He is a stand-up improv comic, actor and icon based out of Auckland, right here in New Zealand. Dec came to me when I put out my indication of interest and seeing what kind of topics people wanted to come on the podcast and talk about, and he suggested that we could talk about the Eurovision Song Contest. Now, given that I was only vaguely familiar with the Eurovision contest, I thought this would be a fantastic podcast as a kind of dipping the toe into the waters of the whole Eurovision experience. And as it turned out, Dec was really, really informative and just a lovely guy, and I think we hit it off really well. And I believe we'll be bringing him back on the podcast to do another couple of bits and pieces here and there. Hey folks, just a little message from, I just dropped a bottle cap. Just a little message from future Taylor here. At the time of this recording, Dec and I were talking about watching the 2024 Eurovision contest, but as I understand it, the fans of the Eurovision are calling for a boycott as the situation with Israel and Gaza still hasn't been resolved, so they're calling for people not to watch it this year, and I believe Dec is not going to watch it this year. So in order to respect the wishes of my guest and the just the fans of Eurovision, I will in fact not be tuning in this year. So with that, let's get back on with the interview. Just had to chuck this little bit in as the situation kept developing and we recorded this a few weeks into the past. All right, thank you. Back to the show. So before I bring Dec onto the podcast, just want to get one quick plug out of the way. I am going to be in Nelson at the end of this week on the 14th and 15th of March. I am performing my show, Panic at the Buffet, in the Nelson Fringe Festival. Both shows are 9 o'clock at Studio One, and you can find your tickets at nelsonfringe.co.nz. The show is about 4 or potentially 5 different experiences I had where I started overthinking something, panicked, and did something stupid, and then reaped the consequences each time. So I'd love to see you there. If that sounds like your cup of tea, it's going to be a very, very funny comedy show. The week after that, I'm going to be in Dunedin from the 20th to the 23rd, so I'm doing 4 nights, and that is on at Inch Bar. That is going to be from 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock, and then my friend Craig Westenberg is doing his show, Craig's List, straight after that, so you can get a sort of double barrel of comedy without having to leave Inch Bar. And as you might have guessed, those tickets are available from dunedinfringe.co.nz. Alrighty, let's get on with the podcast. I hope you enjoy it. I sure enjoyed having the conversation. So let's welcome to the show, Dec McHale, everyone. Good morning, Dec. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Taylor.
It's nice to meet you. Sort of finally, we've been chatting for a little bit, teeing up the logistics of this one, and I'm quite looking forward to learning about Eurovision today.
Yeah, I'm very excited to teach you.
Yes, you provided a nice little playlist for me to check out, and you had some commentary for each clip that you sent me, and it was very informative. So I guess we'll kind of just start from the beginning. I thought it was quite interesting. You said that Eurovision was actually sort of born out of the aftermath of World War II.
Yeah, so I think to understand this big campy behemoth of a music festival that we have now, you have to reflect back on its sort of humble beginnings, which was a very quaint and very beautiful, untelevised music moment where each country would send a song that was performed by a singer of their choosing, and they would have a live orchestra who would play that song as well. Honestly, it was a very cute little boutique moment, and really sort of set the pace, I guess, across Europe in terms of this was the first of its kind. It was the first sort of, now the sort of dust has settled of World War II. The region is financially ruined. There is no sort of sense of unity. There's no sort of sense of um, collaboration between the continent. And it was just this pokey little radio segment that then turned into one of, I think, the second most watched televised event each year.
Wow. So then my question there would be, was Germany allowed to submit a song in Eurovision, or were they sort of still in the naughty corner after World War
So,
Two?
yeah, so I guess early days we were not welcoming the presence of Germany. But and again, this has, I think, been such a valuable um, interest of mine, I guess, is because you learn so much geopolitics as like a byproduct of getting to go to a little campy music event.
Yeah,
Um,
you had something in your notes about there was a singer or a band that literally had to get to the airport during, was it a
yeah,
civil war or something
yeah,
to
yeah. So
perform?
this was the first time that Bosnia and Herzegovina had entered as their own individual state, right? So they'd previously entered under Yugoslavia, and yeah, that was a documentary that I watched, and it just showed the singers. Now, you heard the song. I'm happy for you to give it your own rating, but I'm not under any illusions that it's not it hasn't lasted the test of time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the what I found so interesting about, and I don't know whether it was backloaded with the fact that you told me the situation of it, but there was a certain gravitas to the performance. I thought it
mhm.
felt very not somber as such, but there was a weight to it, and yeah, that wasn't lost on me based on the history of what you told me about it. So, um, that like you say, the song it didn't blow me away, but
Right.
when you know the context of what was happening, it was quite a
Really
cool moment to
stunning.
see.
Hey, yeah,
Yeah,
really
yeah.
beautiful. And I think I love the fact that because it is in real time, you get all of these crazy moments. So during the fall of Yugoslavia, um, there were still remnants of the countries that sort of interlock in different ways. And Serbia and Montenegro used to enter for a 2-year period as one country, as Serbia and Montenegro. And interestingly, there was so much kerfuffle selecting their Eurovision entry the final year that people actually credit Eurovision to the downfall of that sort of state. They credit that
Wow,
bonkers, hey.
that is. I just think of this idea for almost like a Bond villain, this big campy sort of movie where some guys want to secede from a European country so that they get their own entry into Eurovision as their end goal.
Yeah, I think that's a great. I think we should write it and I'll submit it to TVNZ on air and see what they say.
All right, that sounds great. Um, so then I guess I'm not quite sure where to go next. That was the beginnings of Eurovision, and now you say it's the second most watched kind of musical event. Um, You have been watching since about 2004, was it you said? Or was it
Hmm.
2000? Yeah. Um, Give us your initial impression. Do you still remember like how you decided to watch it? Did you stumble upon it? What was your what was your experience there?
So I joined the Eurovision party about 8 years old, and my neighbor down the road suggested that um, we come around to their house and watch it. And my mum went down, and so did my sister and my neighbors and their children. And we all sat around and watched it, and I was just mesmerized. It felt so adult. It felt so, because I guess you were just seeing almost a live TV moment, and it felt important. I think one of the real reasons I love Eurovision is that they are so excellent at narrating their own history. They're so
Really?
good. Oh, honestly, fabulous in terms of like they make you believe that every contest matters, and they're almost nostalgia merchants in terms of a competition, because you do have these moments where you go, "Oh yeah, I remember this. That was cool."
Oh,
Um,
so um, uh, oh, there's sort of two thoughts there. Like, so the songs that they play in there, because I obviously can't speak many of the languages they sing,
mhm.
are they almost like a historical something to do with the history of the country that they're coming from, generally?
So so to be a Eurovision song, you need to have not been performed more than 6 months before May,
Oh,
which is Eurovision month. So often you can tell which countries have scrabbled together at the last minute to get their performer together. But I think, for example, and now this is something that I won't go into a whole heap of detail because I don't think I can justify it. But for some reason, Australia now competes in Eurovision.
right, right, okay.
And the rumor this year for Australia is Danny Minogue.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Which you
okay.
can sort of tell because she's been priming this song for the past couple. So sometimes you can
Interesting.
clock what's going on.
So then
Um,
I've got a
you go.
follow-up question to that,
Mhm.
because I'm not super familiar with the criteria to be selected to be a Eurovision musician. So does it have to be a relatively new song for the year that you're entering?
So as long as it hasn't been performed before 6 months before May, then you are welcome to bring your song.
Gotcha.
Um, it used to be the case. Oh, this actually segs really nicely. It used to be the case that both the musician and the writer had to be from the host country.
Gotcha.
Um, but with um, some microstates, so say for example San Marino, Malta, um, babe, they don't have the people.
Right.
It would,
Yeah.
it would,
Yeah.
it would almost be like jury service, like, oh, it's my turn to perform Eurovision.
Come on, Dick. Here's your letter in the mail. You've got to write a Eurovision song for us this year.
I think so. Honest, I'd love to be Sam Murnay's for that reason, I think.
You've got a really
Um,
statistically high chance of getting into Eurovision in a smaller country. Because I
but what it
remember
makes me, you know,
I was going to say, I remember Two Hearts. They're a Kiwi sort of music duo here. They were making a pitch to get into Eurovision, and I don't know whether they did or not. But I mean, like you say, not a huge country, New Zealand, so
mhm.
statistically quite a high chance of getting selected.
I could be in. Honestly, I could be in. No, I shout out to Two Hearts because that was a phenomenal music video.
It
I
was
really
really good,
enjoyed
wasn't it?
it.
Yeah.
So good. What I will say though is that Australia, as a Eurovision purist and as a Eurovision fan since a young age, it makes it so hard to justify when you're trying to explain what this festival is to your friends that, oh yeah, so it's all of Europe and then a couple of adjacent countries and then
Yes.
also Australia. It sort of
Yeah.
makes it, oh, okay,
It is kind of interesting about the identity of what is European because I almost wouldn't really consider England Europe, but they enter as well every year. You had some nice note. You sent me the worst ever entry, and it looked like who's that chef, Jamie Oliver? It looked like him and someone else doing this duo. But the what I found interesting is when I don't know if they still do it, but when we would fill out the census form here in New Zealand, my
hmm
ethnicity would always be NZ. It would be European slash NZ Pākehā or something like that.
got it.
I thought, am I really European? I don't think I'm European at all. Like we're a little island
Uh,
in the middle of the ocean. Like yes, I don't know. That was it, but perhaps I could see how they could make that case for Australia and New Zealand.
it's an interesting one, isn't it? So I guess um, the there are certain countries that are quite clearly not in Europe. For example, Azerbaijan enters every year, and Morocco once entered. And so there are countries from outside of Europe that entered, but geographically were way more tenable to explain to a normie audience than try to say, "Oh yeah, Australian." But what I do appreciate about the fact that Australia are in it is that they send quality acts with quality songs each year.
Yeah,
That
yeah, you've got to
is,
do that.
put some respect upon this
Yes,
contest. The
exactly. Yeah.
UK, the UK spent so from when I started watching that little moment I sent you where we did this sort of terrible rendition of a pop song that was almost a parody of a pop song. It was so bad. From that moment, for about 10 to 15 years, the UK just deliberately sent garbage. Like
Really?
uh, uh, you can never claim deliberately,
No,
but
yes.
the amount of shite that as a Eurovision fan and as somebody from the UK, you have to go, oh yeah, I believe in it. It was always awful, man. It was so
Interesting.
disappointing. Yeah.
The I was gonna say as well, just quickly, that based on the Australia being having like taking it seriously and sending good acts, it's almost like they're on that 90-day job trial where they've really got to put in the effort for the first few Eurovisions, and then they can start to phone it in once they're kind of grandfathered in. But
100%.
the UK did have a winner one year, didn't they?
So the UK were used to in the very early days. So just after we'd sort of left this beautiful little um, orchestral moment, then I guess the music really started to change. I'm going to do a little seg to 1974,
Hmm.
which is when my Lords and Saviors, ABBA, won the contest in Brighton. And it changed the way in which the music industry looked at the competition, and it
Interesting.
changed the way that we all looked at the competition as this creator of stars, this
Yeah,
creator of world beaters, and we reference ABBA every year. You know, it's actually quite an interesting moment because I think it's 74 that would make it 50 years
yeah, yeah.
since ABBA won,
Oh, and they
and
still bring
Sweden
it up every year.
every year, but
Wow.
Sweden won this year. So they will do a big homecoming, and there's all the teasing of, oh, will ABBA come back? Will they do one last final performance of a full circle moment?
Yes,
Um,
that's true. The that's big shoes to fill for the any team that's followed ABBA.
yeah,
That where I was curious about this because I've just recently watched Mamma Mia for the first time. Quite
hmm
enjoyed that movie, and
gorgeous film.
yeah, and it looked like a lot of fun. And I was gonna say, were ABBA a big name before that, or were they it was the kingmaker for them was Eurovision.
Was Eurovision, and you know what? They were not even picked as favorites going into it.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy, hey? And the rest is history. You know that they really are an example of changing the game.
Yes, yeah. Because back in the early days, do you have any idea of what the viewership was like in terms of people watching Eurovision?
Um, so I know that currently around 250 to 300 million people watch it.
Wow.
That's crazy, hey, that's
Yeah, it
big
is.
numbers.
Europe's a big
Um,
place, isn't it?
yeah, but I'm not sure early days of numbers. Um, but I think in terms of like stars that they created, you see ABBA, and then you see Olivia Newton-John, and then you see Celine Dion, and then there are just it continued for so long in just producing these huge names. And the last time that the UK won was with group Katrina and the Waves, which you would know the song that went, I used to think, baby, you love me.
Yeah,
Now, baby, I'm sure.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
they were the last time that the UK won. And that was sort of before I'd started watching. and it felt like we'd done such a good job. It felt like the that was like the last time that the BBC took it seriously. And
Right, right.
there's also that conversation around it's an expensive gig to host, Taylor. It's
No
a
kidding.
very
Yeah.
so there was an episode of, the Irish sitcom Father Ted.
Yes.
They do an episode of that where um they have to write a Eurovision entry that won't win because the Irish contingency won 4 times in 5 years, and the broadcaster just had no money left. They were
So
just like,
if
you
you
go.
win Eurovision, it then
Mhm.
is I'll put on a newer country the following year. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so funny. I did
So
not know that.
in the 90s, Ireland just went on this triumphant run of just sending banger after banger after banger,
Uh-huh.
and they just kept winning. And they were already a poor nation anyway. And the final time they hosted it in like a stables,
Oh
just
no.
just to keep it revenue even.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is
yeah, I
wild.
love that.
So
Good.
I should have asked this around the beginning, but in terms of winning, how is that decided? Is that voted on by the public, or do they have judges? What's the kind of how do they decide?
So the Eurovision has kept voting interesting the whole way through. So
Ah,
during the early days, it just used to be a private jury vote, and whoever got the most votes would win. And then we sort of moved towards a more public jury vote. So a big pull of Eurovision is actually watching the Eurovision voting sequence at the
yeah,
end. So they call, and this used to be done on those big chunky landline phones with the cord down the
yeah,
bottom,
yeah.
and they'd say, "Oh, good evening." Say if it was in Sweden, they'd say, "Good evening, Stockholm. This is London calling." And here are the UK points, and it became this official sort of um, quite important moment. Um, yeah,
I have
very.
I have some friends that do a Eurovision watching party every year, and
Mhm.
I think for them as well, the voting is
So
a big part of
exciting.
it.
Hmm.
The what was I going to say? How long is the event when you actually watch it live?
So there are a number of side shows and plot quests that you can follow down to the end. This was a debate after the most recent one that was held in Liverpool, which I actually went to.
Oh,
Yeah, very exciting.
yeah.
But that was 9 hours of TV
Oh
altogether,
my God.
which I think they've really put a pin in this year and just said, hey, actually, that's too long. That's
Yeah,
way too
yeah.
long to keep. So they do two semi-finals and they do one grand final. Now, the grand final one was almost 4 hours this time,
Wow.
which, yeah, it was a lot. I mean, I loved it. I
Yeah,
fucking loved it.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I keep swearing too
No, no,
much. My
swearing
apologies.
is all good.
Okay, cool.
It is on the radio, but it's at 11 o'clock, so they don't mind what kind of salty language we use. So
Love that. That's
I was going to
cool.
say if it was any shorter, we could do a live watch along and do a podcast alongside that. But we we may have to just cut to 2 hours, do the last 2 hours or something.
Absolutely.
We could
No,
just do a
that's cool.
recap or something. I suppose I could watch it, and we could have a sort of a seasoned vet who knows Eurovision versus the unwashed masses of me not
I
knowing
think
it.
that would be a great call. Let's
When
do
is the
that
next
for
when is the
sure.
next Eurovision?
So it's May every year.
Yep. Okay, not too long
Um,
away.
not too long away. We yeah, so the exciting moment this year is the UK are sending an established act, which is something that
Really?
yeah, so the the act's name is Ollie Alexander, who used to perform under the pseudonym Years and Years.
Okay. Yes, I've heard both of those names.
Mm.
Ah,
So, and he claims to be sending a camp bop. So, if this is true, I'm feeling very excited.
yeah, yeah. That sort of, I suppose that touches on another thing that you mentioned a few times in your notes. It seems like there is quite a lot of LGBT representation in the Eurovision. Has that always been a theme, or is this fairly recently?
So we affectionately refer to the contest as the Gay Olympics. Uh,
Okay, I didn't know that either. That's really funny though. The Gay
because it's our
Olympics, I
little
love it.
moment, you know, like we
Yeah.
just get to clap along with the. It's like how you guys enjoy sport. Not, I'm generalizing all straight dudes there. I don't know if that's your
Yeah, I know
moment,
what you
but
mean.
okay,
Um,
cool.
yes, it's like your event, I suppose, would be the that this is your yeah, like you say, this is our Olympics, I suppose, would be the way to talk about it.
100%,
Do
definitely.
do people ever bet on the on Eurovision?
I've put some serious money away on Eurovision because they do that beautiful thing they do with sport in which you can bet on so many different
Yes.
outcomes.
Yeah.
Like I'm voting for like which Nordic woman will feature in the top four or which mid-tempo ballad might reach the top 10 or just
Yeah.
ridiculous
Yeah. You're
outcomes,
putting
but
very specific things.
I
There's
love it.
there's ones on the UFC, they can bet on ridiculous things like, is the announcer going to jump when he announces this so and so thing, or are they going to touch gloves, or is this person going to crouch down just before they announce the finish? Yeah, you really can bet on anything, can't you?
It's crazy. It's honestly, but also I do like. So my sister is a scratch card queen. Do you have the scratchies? They're like, yeah,
Oh
we do
yeah,
have them here, right?
yeah,
Yep.
very familiar with the scratchies.
And I learned from her early on that gambling was not my vice. That's
Yes,
not the one that I will be doing. But when Eurovision comes around and the odds, and because I feel like I'm an insider, bear in mind
yeah.
I'm absolutely not, you know, like
But if you've
I
been
have
watching for a long time, you've got more of an informed opinion on, the average person watching it.
agree,
Yeah,
agree, but you can never expect what could happen. I think let's just go back on conversation for 1 second. So I sent you some of my favorite entries,
you did. Yeah.
including Verka Serduchka, who was a Ukrainian drag queen dressed in tinfoil,
Oh yes, that one
who
was quite good.
sang
Yeah,
was visually stunning.
yeah, yeah,
Um, just nobody picked that. Nobody was like, okay, this is what Europe is going to fall in love with. Or my favorite entry of recent times was in 2022. Lady's name was Constractor, and she sang this song in Serbian about washing your hands
yes,
with
that one was.
reference.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I didn't quite understand. Was that just sort of a current events? COVID, wash your hands. Meghan Markle's been in the news a lot. Sort of. We'll put it in a song.
So it was that, but I think because you don't speak Serbian, because like you apply your own meaning to it, you apply your own sort of enjoyment to it. And I just remember being enamored by this because she's visually stunning,
Hmm.
sat at a table just washing her hands
Yeah,
with backing singer druids all around her, and one would just stop midway through the song to provide her with the towel to
yeah.
wipe her hands.
That's right.
What are we watching?
I know, right?
And I
How do they come
love
up
that
with these
energy
things?
of like I really enjoy. I think sort of going back to that sort of first ever time I watched it with my mom, my sister, and my neighbors in the living room. I think I just love those moments of thinking into each other's living rooms and wondering what the conversations are and wondering what
Yeah.
um, the critiques are.
Especially because it seems like the Eurovision is almost the equivalent of like a not necessarily a new material open mic, but it seems like it's a very free space to try things out that maybe at a typical music festival might be a bit like what the hell is going on there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bringing you to gorgeously to my final, I guess, game changer, as I called them, was Lordi,
I
who
love that performance so much.
Stunning, hey? It's
Yeah,
just they were already an established Finnish rock group, so they already had a following, they already had a backing. They were announced as the Finnish entry, and the Western Europeans and the UK crowd foul. They said, "No way, you're making a mockery of our Camp Little festival. How dare you?" And they just showed that the audience will respond to the best performance of the night,
absolutely.
regardless of what it looks like, regardless of what it sounds like. If you have the best track, if you have the best performance, you'll win.
Yeah. The the mute just to describe that for the listeners, in case they haven't seen it, they're sort of dressed up like demons, and they've got big wings, and they're almost like Kiss turned up to 11, I think, in the kind of vibe of the look. And then they do this song called Hard Rock Hallelujah, which is almost like a it's almost like a hymn or a church song, but it's been kind of they've changed the lyrics up to make them very. They're almost like they kind of felt Tenacious D and that kind of rock gods and raise your goblet and all that kind of thing, and
Very
I
that
loved it.
energy. Yeah.
So that leads really nicely into my next question: is you do often see these kind of not outliers as such, but that people submit something a little bit different. Like
Hmm.
Måneskin, they won 2, 3 years ago with just a rock
Brilliant.
and roll song, and
Hmm.
like I love that song. It was great, and I guess I'm not quite sure what the question is, but why? Do you know why the leaning is more towards like the kind of pop? Pop. You used a word describing it in our chats that I can't remember, but the sort of
The
poppy.
mid-tempo pop girly
Yeah, that's the one.
moment,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
100%.
Um,
It's because in I think it's a very safe medium. It's a very safe middle ground that has translated well across all 43 countries for the past 20 years. So I think if a country is still establishing its identity, or if it's still realistically, if it doesn't have the strongest musicians, I feel like a mid-tempo pop girly song tends to be the sort of the safe space, the safe. Okay, this will definitely sort of not embarrass us, but
mm,
it's the countries who march to the beat of their own drum that seem to just have the wackiest, craziest results. Like Ukraine will always, regardless of the style or the genre, they will always send somebody with beautiful musical ability. They'll always send somebody. So they won in 2022 with a Ukrainian rap song, which I fully recommend
I feel like
anybody
I have
listen
seen that.
to.
Yes, I do. Now that you mentioned a rap song in Eurovision, I think somebody did send that to me.
Just stunning. And I think that's um the risk that you take is that yes, this big sea and plethora of pop girlies are what you're giving the gays what they need. But but it's the outliers, if executed well, will win.
Very interesting. I feel like there's actually quite a good lesson for any entertainers out there in the terms of, like I guess if Lordy won the year that they released,
Hmm.
they entered with that.
Significantly. Mm.
I feel like even if they hadn't won, it was such a different performance that it probably would have still been a boost for them, and people would have been like, you because you hear it and you go, okay, I know what their voice is, I know what the band is all about, and so
Right.
it's actually quite a good lesson to any entertainers listening to just be different, I guess, right? Like,
100%. And I think that's, but also to producers as well, right? Like
mm,
it's a lesson to us all as an entertainment industry that your acts thrive when they're the anomaly or when they bring something different to the show. Um,
absolutely, yeah.
you've met Joel Vincent, hey?
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
Gormless.
Auckland. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
He and I work so beautifully together because you just get such opposing
Hmm.
comic styles
Of course,
that
yeah.
the audience is allowed to enjoy both of them because you're not sort of burnt out from 10
Yeah.
pop girlies in a row.
Absolutely. It's like I follow quite a few one-liner comedians, and they always
Mhm.
talk about not wanting one-liner openers. They want, storytellers or whatever, because they don't want their audience burnt out on the one-liners by the time they get on stage. Alrighty, so we have been talking about a lot of the really positive stuff to come, sort of surrounding and from the Eurovision, but you also mentioned something maybe not as light that we wanted to talk about, and this ties back into the knowing of the geopolitics of Europe, based on what's happening each year in the Eurovision. So, just a content warning to the listeners out there, we're going to be talking about some of the Israel Palestine stuff. So, that might contain some confronting imagery, not imagery, but you know what I mean, confronting or disturbing themes. So, just discretion. Discretion is advised. So, what's the kind of lay of the land that you mentioned, with that situation this year in Eurovision?
So, unfortunately, the genocide exists and the genocide is happening. And Eurovision, whilst was made from a an attempt to create unity and peace across Europe and beyond, it feels like the sort of the late stage capitalist version of Eurovision feels very afraid to live by those values and live by those standards. Um, we had to campaign for so long whilst Russia was actively invading Ukraine for Russia to not be allowed to take part. It's sort of
Wow.
it became such a long, drawn out process, and unfortunately, the same is happening again with Israel. Um, and unfortunately, I think Israel has a lot more um, history, shall we say, in terms of being a part of the contest and being a part of a true meaning of the unity that Eurovision was aiming to sing out. I remember one of the
Really?
most important wins of the contest was this gorgeous German girl, and she sang this song of unity, and it was the first time that Israel had given Germany 12 points, which is the top score. And so it became such an important milestone in terms of peace and unity and what the contest was trying to achieve. And it
Because I
feels
guess
almost you
I
go.
was going to say the whole situation of that. I only just recently learned that the kind of state of Israel almost came out of the Holocaust and the Second World War, which
Hmm.
spawned Eurovision.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's really, really deeply entwined with the history of Eurovision, isn't
Exactly.
it?
Yeah, it has such
Wow.
an important place in the contest. However, um, there is there is no logical way in which you can justify their entry into Eurovision this year, and particularly for the next few years, whilst hopefully we have some sort of internal revolution and the evil men who are currently in charge of the state of Israel are brought to justice.
Right, right.
Um,
Because yeah, it does seem really, really hypocritical. The whole point of Eurovision is unity. So it's like, how can you have a country literally like the Russia invading another country or something? That boggles the mind, doesn't it?
but
What
then
actually
I
happened with?
also,
Oh, go ahead,
you
sorry.
go,
I was
I
just going to say what happened.
also, twice.
Zoom.
Um, Also, I would just like to flag that it's from a hypocritical place of a British person speaking about.
Yes.
um,
Yeah. I think the listeners know you mean well, with what you're talking about.
Absolutely,
So yeah.
I hope so, but I just think that there is a real argument to be said. Hey, look, we cannot allow bloodthirsty war leaders into our competition, and at some point we need to raise the mirror at the likes of the UK, France, and the Netherlands, and countries who are actively partaking in bombings of places that um, shouldn't that just have innocent people in them,
Right,
regardless of
right.
whether there are evil people there as well. I don't think that life is should be a byproduct um a byproduct of arguments that could be had in a room.
Yeah, no kidding, huh? The ha- I just can't even imagine the idea of like you're currently at war. Oh, but we still got to send a band to like what a mood whiplash that is, right? Like
Crazy.
that one that you mentioned, the war-torn country when they were trying to get to the airport. I'm
Hmm.
guessing it was them being invaded, not the other way around.
It was a crazy civil war in
Civil War,
Bosnia and
okay.
Herzegovina. Yeah, it was an awful moment for them. But it's quite interesting. So when geopolitics started to sort of rumble in the early 2010s, Russia sent a Russia went on a campaign, I guess, of sending these poor, beautiful, sweet girls, very young, blonde, beautiful girls who were getting booed in the audience, and
Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in, isn't it?
it just seems so I don't. I have a lot of sympathy. I got my first hate mail the other day, Taylor, and
Did
I
you?
was really proud of it.
Sorry about that,
So,
by the way.
sorry, I should have said my first hate mail that wasn't from my own dad. No, I'm
Oh,
joking.
what was the hate mail about?
Oh, it was your jokes are as gay as you is the comment that was left,
Yeah,
which to that I say
right.
thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like, I mean, if that's what you're going for, then it just seems like he's kind of summing up your act, right? Like,
Correct is the
ah,
answer. So I had, but what I'm trying to say is that I have a lot of empathy for some of these artists that have to represent, well, they don't have to, but I assume that there is a point of have to. Like, I don't know if I'd be going against a Russian state-owned
yeah, saying
broadcast.
no to the KGB or whatever would be a risky endeavor to say the least, right? There's
Mm,
to potentially open up another can of worms. I know there's a bit of controversy going on with the Hugo Award or something this year, another sort of geopolitical something to do with not wanting to offend China or something. And so it is bizarre how some of these events um, uh, can be influenced by, like you say, all these men having an argue, having a tiff, essentially. When and then yeah, all the bloody it's all us, the common people, that sort of have to suffer for it when bloody wars and stuff happen. But I guess succinctly put by the Rage Against the Machine in that song that I was indirectly quoting just there. But I was going to say, with the Russia in Eurovision, are they still not in, or are they? Because they're still at war.
they're
And
still very much, and so I went to Kiev in 2017 to actually go and watch the Eurovision, which
oh
was
right,
a hell of an experience. I loved it. Um, but a lot of their history. So the Russia's participation came to an end when Jamala won in 2016 with this. So she is Crimean, and she wrote this beautiful song, which I'll link you. I can't believe I didn't include that in the
okay, yeah,
initial list I sent you. She wrote this beautiful song about the initial invasion from Russia in the Crimean territory,
right, right,
and sang that in 2016 and won very deservedly so.
yeah.
Um, but Russia pulled umbrage with the fact that if we're not allowed to talk about politics, we shouldn't be allowed to talk about politics.
Oh, so Russia have actually been gone from Eurovision for longer than just the Ukraine war.
Right. So
Wow. Okay, I didn't know
that
that.
was when the temperature of the Russia-Ukraine moment was rising, and
Yes.
that's when they took a step out and said, "No, we're not doing this anymore."
Right, right.
Um, and then they sort of made their attempted comebacks after Ukraine had finished hosting, and then the COVID-19 virus was the first year that the contest has ever been cancelled in sort of 60
Wow.
plus years. Yeah,
Damn.
quite crazy.
It is, yeah.
Um, and then Russia launched their full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which is still their occupation still
Still
continues,
going
and
on, yeah.
it doesn't make the news anymore. But still have so many beautiful friends in Kiev who just live having to go down to bomb shelters at different times of the day, and it just feels
Horrific, eh?
so
Wow.
awful. And I complain about it being too hot in Auckland, like in terms
Yeah,
of
you
life
just the mind
issues.
boggles, eh? That the news cycle, because the all the Ukraine stuff's not sort of like
It's not
trendy or
present
not
anymore.
yeah, not sexy anymore. So um yeah, I don't know. I'm not wise enough to really speak on any of these geopolitical situations, but I just feel for the people that are getting caught up in it, eh? It's
And
sucks.
likewise, I would just like to add that disclaimer that you so neatly put there. I do not know enough about geopolitics to be really making honest aspersions on these conflicts. But what I will say is that no innocent should be dying for a conversation that could be had in a room.
Yeah, I think that's a hard stance to disagree with. So I think we're covered there. We might, who knows, we might get some hate mail. I'll share the hate mail with you if we
Yeah,
get any.
please.
But
I'd
I
love
don't know.
that.
I suspect my listeners will be kind of a similar kind of mindset. So we've sort of got through some of that the negativity there. Let's try and bookend this with some positivity. So I guess I'd like to just talk to you about why the Eurovision contest as a whole is so meaningful to you. Like, you spoke about how you got into it, but obviously there is a reason that you've been watching it year after year, and I imagine you've probably taken some inspiration yourself as a performer. Yeah, just do you have any thoughts about how it's influenced you, why it's such a special event to you? And we'd love to hear them.
That's a really cool question, one that I should have prepared for. Um, but I think it's the celebration of something that doesn't feel like there is an obvious loser. So for me, rooting for somebody doesn't mean that another person loses. It just means that the person that I enjoyed the most or the act that I enjoyed the most wins. And I think that's sort of where I sort of disengage from sport in a way, is that I don't
Mm,
enjoy cheering in a 22 person game for 11 of them to go home heartbroken.
yeah.
That's not my MO.
That was my first impression because I had been sort of vaguely aware of Eurovision, and then the Måneskin winners performance. Someone linked it to me and said, "What a banger this song is!" And
Fire.
the whole vibe of this. They're kind of in arenas and stuff now, aren't they? The whole
Hmm.
vibe of this arena was like. It wasn't like the losers were bummed out. They were just as happy for Måneskin for
And
winning, and all of the hosts were like, "What a beautiful event this is, amazing!" And yeah, the whole thing just felt very, very positive, which is rare in today's day and age for contests, isn't it?
and they do it on an annual basis. It's like a revisit from your friends that just come and give you a big warm hug, sit and watch 3 hours of the craziest of acts and different genre changes and genre introductions. Like I feel like I could do a whole nother episode with you on just Balkan ballads. There is so many Balkan music that I didn't even realize would be my cup of tea, that I found myself going, "Oh, this is my jam."
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's just this opportunity to step away from life's pressures, life's down moments, and just sit and enjoy some campy fun and get
Mm.
involved in the statistics of it and get involved in the voting, and it's like a gay autistic person's dream, in that you get to do stats, you get to do campy costumes, you get to do like, oh, the list goes on. It's
Yes,
yeah,
yeah. I
it
imagine
holds
as
a very
well.
special place in my heart.
Yeah, I imagine as well the fact that it's an event for some people is quite a it's sort of almost your routine. You're like you say, you're catching up with your friends every year, and rituals are important, and any kind of thing that brings you together with your friends for how long did you say it was? 8 or 9 hours or something.
So
It's
I love my friends here. However, as I am the only diehard fan, they leave the two semi-finals to me, and I watch those alone. And then we gather at my house at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and I
Wow.
provide mimosas and pastries, and we just get tanked and watch it. And by 10 a.m., I get put to bed.
Fantastic. Well, I think I'm definitely going to make the effort to watch it this year. And we will have to do I don't know, like a recap or something. And
Absolutely,
that
absolutely.
sounds delightful. Just to perhaps tease the listeners into coming back. Are there any other concepts for episodes of the podcast we could do? Like you've got your Baltic ballads. We could do a tier
Balkan.
list. What did you say?
Yeah, Balkan ballads.
Balkan, sorry. Baltic is a something else. Yeah.
Different areas, different areas.
And
Um,
yeah, do you have any other? Because you said you had a few ideas. Is there anything you could sort of tease the listener with? Um,
I, I I think we need to do a winners ranking. I think we should do like a tier list, and we can sort of go through all the iterations of what Europe found like enjoyable at what time.
yes,
I
that
think
sounds
you'd
good.
really enjoy the period of Ireland always winning. I think that's a very fun moment that we could visit. And you could
Yes,
sort of see the deterioration in production quality while still maintaining beautiful music.
I love it.
Um,
That sounds like a
yeah,
fantastic idea.
we have a number of things to return. And what I will say to you, Taylor, is that Eurovision fans love to consume content. So this will, I'm not saying it'll do numbers, but it might do numbers.
My do numbers. It might be the second most viewed podcast in New Zealand. No, that's great. I'll have to post it in the Eurovision
What's the
Reddit or
first?
something. So then we'll wrap things up. I really appreciate you spending this kind of couple of hours we've done recording. Where can the people out there reach you if they would like to see more of your comedy?
I'm so glad that you've asked that, Taylor, because people can find me at Dec Comedy on Instagram and TikTok, or you can find me every month at the Covert Theatre in Ponsonby in Auckland, where I host a monthly stand-up lineup show called Wednesday Laughs. They could check that out. Finally, the big project that I have been working on for the past 6 months is called Grants, and it's a stand-up lineup show that proves that comedy knows no borders. And we have just been announced that our show has made it to the New Zealand Comedy Festival
Hell
for the
yeah.
first time.
Brilliant.
Very exciting.
That is
Yes,
great.
very
Yeah.
happy
Where
about
are you
that.
playing for that?
I'm not allowed to say.
Oh, it's under embargo. Okay.
It's under embargo until, I mean, it probably won't be after this podcast airs, but um,
Yeah.
when
So just in case, this is not going to drop until probably the 11th of March. So
I'll
let's bank
I'll
on the fact.
probably not. Yeah, I'll
All right.
not. That's good to know. But yeah, go and check it out. Follow it at Grants on Instagram, which is the word immigrants. Take out the second I and add the word haha.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for joining me, Dick. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Yeah, loved being a guest. Have me back. Love you. See you soon.
Absolutely.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.